All right, I'm gonna just go ahead and get started since it's already 11:32 and the waiting room is off so people can just join as they finish up in other sessions. And so I was kind of telling Jack, I was really fortunate in the spring when we all went into crisis teaching and we were all kind of treading water to keep our head afloat. I had a really great section of 1308. And they told me right away, we don't like online learning and we don't want to do online learning. And so I committed to them from the beginning to do my best to replicate the classroom environment online. And so what I'm going to share with you is just kind of a hodgepodge of things that I found that they were very honest with me about the things they hated and the things they actually liked. So I'm going to just present to you some of the things that were more successful with that particular group. And then in the summer sessions, I've kind of been able to modify them and expand on them and make them a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is go through kind of two categories. I'm going to talk about student collaboration, and then I'm going to talk about student engagement. We're probably not going to get through everything by 12:30. So I'm going to see if Linda will put the PowerPoint that includes links to everything for you guys to use so that you can check out all of these activities on your own. But I'm going to start with student collaboration. So usually I am not a huge lecturer. I try to never lecture more than about 50% of an in-person class. And so then the other 50% we do activities, group activities. And that was a real challenge for me. I don't know about you guys, and please chime in and add to what I'm saying or tell me your feedback at any time. Just always unmute yourself and chime in. But I felt like the easiest thing to do in March was, let me just lecture. Let me just lecture. I can turn on the video and I'm just going to lecture. And the hardest thing was to figure out how to get the students to collaborate with each other in a similar way as they were in the classroom in these group activities. And so it was really a challenge for me to create that classroom-like environment. And so what I experimented with a lot are breakout groups. And I still use Blackboard Collaborate. I haven't really had any problems with it. I know a lot of you guys have switched over to Zoom. Some people are using Google Hangouts, but all of those have the application to put students in these breakout groups. And so I've been experimenting with that and kind of finding some things that do work in the breakout groups and other things that really didn't work. But what I do like about it is it kind of does diversify the learning environment. It takes it away from all lecture and gives you the opportunity to create that space for the students to do some peer-to-peer learning, which is really important. They can explain things. Sometimes when I pop in the breakout groups and I hear the way one of the students is explaining it to someone else, I'm like, oh, I'm going to jot that down. That's a really good analogy. I wouldn't have thought to explain it that way. And so they just kind of have a way of communicating with each other sometimes where we can get a little bit in our head. We have all this knowledge and sometimes we can kind of muddle it up for them, and they sometimes are able to explain it to each other better than we can explain it to them. And then also just that space for dialogue. It's kind of scary, especially if you're a shy person, which I actually am. And so it can be a little scary in a group environment to speak up, and they feel a little bit freer to communicate with each other when they're in that smaller space. But here's the problem, and please chime in. I don't know if y'all have run into this. When I started this in March, trying to put them in breakout groups, what I would find, so on Blackboard Collaborate, you can see the panel of everyone in the group, and you can see if their microphone is on or off, right? Have y'all done this? And I would scroll through, and there would be groups where everybody's microphone was off. And I would pop in and be like, guys, hey, what are y'all doing? Crickets. Like, I don't know if they had gone to get lunch. Like, nobody was interacting. And so I was racking my brain. I read, I researched, what are ways to increase engagement in these breakout groups? Instead of just putting them in the groups, how can I increase their engagement? And so I found this really old school teaching strategy. I was actually a high school teacher before I came to ACC, before my oldest daughter was born, and she's 16. So a while ago. And this is a strategy that they had taught me in my alternative certification class. So it's really old school, but I came across it and it caught my attention. This idea of think, pair, share. And so how this works is you tell them to individually, you just give them a question or an assignment. One thing I did at the beginning of 1308 this summer, their first day of class, their homework assignment was to just Google a headline that relates to biology. You know, 90% of them came back with a COVID headline, obviously, but hey, Google anything you want. Some of them came back with some interesting things on climate change, but I said anything, find one current event headline, bring it to class tomorrow. That's your homework tonight. So they brought their current event, and then I paired them up in their breakout groups to discuss it. And then I brought them back as a whole class. And instead of asking them to share out on their current event, I asked them to share about a group member's current event. So I would say, hey, Trevor, you're in McKenna's group. Can you tell me what McKenna's current event was about? And what happened is they realized, oh, she really expects us to talk, and she's going to hold us accountable when we come back as a whole group for actually speaking to each other. And so I did that a couple of times at the beginning and kind of set that expectation for talking to each other. And so what I found this summer compared to the spring is a lot more engagement in the breakout groups when I started this way with this expectation. And so I have a bunch of things in the Biology 1308 repository, some things that I use in breakout groups. So usually sometimes it's just discussion questions, but what I have found is what is far more effective is giving them a task to complete more than just a discussion question. So this is an example of one that I just project this onto their screen in their breakout group, and then they have to go through and on their board type or write, you know, transcribe this sequence and then translate it, then introduce a mutation, tell me what effect that has. And so I can kind of pop around to the different groups and check on them and hear them explaining to each other how to go through this process. And sometimes, you know, you get a group where I spend a lot of time just with one group because nobody understands, but usually when I Blackboard Collaborate, unfortunately, one of the downsides is you cannot assign groups. They're all random. So, but usually it works out where there is one person at least who can understand and kind of emerges as a leader in that group. So these kind of tactile things where there is like an outcome that I can see on the board are things that I have personally found to be the most effective things to use in breakout groups. I have these charts. Here's one for membrane transport and macromolecules. Sometimes they're diagrams I ask them to label in their groups. So anything that they have to physically write on the board, I personally have found to be a little bit more beneficial and a little bit more engaging when they're in those breakout groups. I'm going to show you guys something that I do with those interactive drag and drop Google Slides. It was Thomas or Curtis. I don't know if either one of them are in here, but one of them made a really good video about how to create these drag and drop Google Slides. So I'm not going to go through how to create the slides. I'm just going to show you how I use them. And so I use them in breakout groups. And what I do is I create a folder in my drive. So I have some in the Biology 1308 repository. I have this one, this mitosis drag and drop. I have one for atom modeling. I have a couple of them in there. So they're just slides. So if you put them in your drive as a Google slide and you make a folder for it, I just copy it 7 or 8 times, however many groups I want to create. And so then each one of these has its own link. So then I just right click and I say get a shareable link. And this is really important. Make sure that these are selected, because I did not the first time I attempted this, and the students are like, I can't drag and drop anything. So you want to make sure everyone who has the link is an editor. And then I just copy that link, and in my announcements, I put a link for each group. So then when I send them into their breakout groups, everybody in group 1 clicks on the link for group 1. And so then what they have on their screen is this manipulative that they can all drag and drop. So what that looks like, let me bring up my actual screen. Let me see. Let me go to the mitosis drag and drop. There it is. I'll share that. So while they are working on this in their group, they can click on their drag and drop, and everyone in their group has the ability to manipulate these things. And then I can pop around between the different groups. I can click on their link as well, and I can check on their progress, and I can say, oh yeah, so see, that's not metaphase. Those sister chromatids are being pulled apart. That's anaphase. And I can talk to them and interact with them, because I can also open their link and see how they're doing. So I have to say, this has probably been the best feedback from my students, is allowing them to work in this collaborative way on these drag and drop activities. They love it. So any questions so far?
Angela, how long do you allow them to continue with the drag and drop, or just the collaborative portion of the?
That is a wonderful question, because you know, when I first started doing these collaborative things, one mistake I made is letting the students dictate how much time. And so I would get bogged down with one group, and then we would have to rush through lecture. So I tell them at the beginning now, I set a time limit. Depending on the activity, I'll say, okay, guys, you have 20 minutes to complete this activity. And then we're all coming back together. And so usually I try to replicate the same model that I use in my class, which is half of the time collaborative work, half of the time lecture.
It's very creative stuff. It's a good job.
Oh, thank you. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about, so I talked about collaboration, and so I want to talk about engagement. I told you guys at the beginning, that first group in March, they were not happy. They did not like online learning. They thought it was impersonal. And it is, because we're separated from each other by a computer screen. So it's hard to build those relationships that you can build with students in a classroom. And so what I really tried to do is find ways to increase the interaction between students and myself, but also between students and the content, so that they really weren't, even during lecture, they weren't just sitting there listening to me drone on and on, or you know, listening to a video. I tried to find some active learning strategies that could increase their interaction with the content, and also some different ways to assess their understanding of the content, besides the traditional worksheets, which we can't even pass out anymore anyway because we're not in person. So finding some innovative ways to assess their learning. So I'm going to go through some just interactive things that I have personally found to be successful with students. And one of them, listen, videos, we have to use them. I mean, really, that's kind of where we're at in terms of labs, although I know Jack has done a really good job finding some kitchen labs, but we're just in a position where we have to rely on videos to convey content, and also in place of a lot of the hands-on labs and activities that we would usually do in an in-person class. So what I found is this application. It's called Edpuzzle, and it turns those videos into an interactive experience. So we can still use them, but in a more interactive way. So I'm going to go to the website, and like I said, on that shared Google Sheet, I will put a link to this presentation so that when you open it, you can click on links to all of these applications that I'm going to show you. So Edpuzzle is one that I really like. So you can, when you click on Edpuzzle, you can create a free account, and there are videos already loaded, tons on YouTube, and I know a lot of you have put your own videos on YouTube, especially for labs. I'm starting to look at some of the 1406 labs for the fall. So your own videos. I have two teenagers, by the way. They are 16 and 14. And when we were on lockdown in March, I put them to work, right? They were my hostages, and I made them work. So one of the things I had them do was some of the models that we would make in 1308, like, you know, making a model of the plasma cell membrane, for example. I had them make those paper models and record themselves, and then I put them on YouTube. So while my students couldn't make the model, they could at least watch the model being made, and then I turned it into an interactive video using this application, Edpuzzle. So anything on YouTube, there's Khan Academy, TED Talks. This guy right here that does the crash course in biology, his stuff is awesome. He's funny, and the students really like him and the way he explains things. So find a video, use one of your own videos. I'm gonna this one right here that says Trending in Science for A&P. I'll just use that one. So you open a video, and all you have to do is click this button right here that says Edit. And look at all that you can do. So you can cut it. So if this is an 11-minute video and you really only want them to watch 3 minutes of it, you can cut it. You can add your own voiceover, and you can add these questions. So you can do multiple choice, open-ended. You can just add a sticky note. And so you can insert these questions that make it more interactive, where they don't just have to watch it, but they are actually interacting with the video. And then when you finish, you know, maybe right here, let me pause it. Oops. Sorry. I was going to show you how to insert a question. I think my computer is taking a minute. So after you have the questions inserted, you say finish. You have this option down here to assign to your students. And so you can create a public link that they can access anytime, but you also have this option to assign to a class, which particularly if you are teaching an asynchronous class and you want to verify that they actually did watch the video and answer the questions, you can assign it to a class. So here's my biology 1308 class. You can add any class you want. You send them a link to join your class. And then when you assign it to them, then it's going to keep a record. They have to sign in with their name. It's going to keep a record of how they answered the questions. So if you wanted to assign a grade, you very well could. You could go to your class, you could open this up, and here are all my students. I can see this one didn't even watch the video. I can see who did, and I can see their score. So I can actually use it as an assessment tool if I choose to do that. And if you're teaching a synchronous class, you could go live as well. The video will play on the main screen, and then on their devices, the questions will come up. So my students have liked this pretty well. I've had to kind of play with it a little bit. But overall, they do like the interactive component of the videos where they don't have to just sit and watch this 10-minute video on a model of the plasma cell membrane. It allows them to interact with the content a little bit more. So did y'all have any questions about this application?
Hi, Angela, it's Jack. I love the idea, and I was hoping to do something like this for the 1406 lab videos.
Yeah.
I was curious, this is free for educators, or do you have to pay to get a subscription? Or
you do not. It is completely free.
Do you know how they make money? Is this just an EDU sponsored type activity, or?
Yeah, I have no idea how they make money because there's not even an option to upgrade. So for some of these applications, I'm going to show you the free version, and then you can upgrade, which I have on most of them just because you have, you know, so many more options. This one is completely free. So there's not even an option to upgrade. So I really have no idea how they make money.
Yeah,
but also you
free for now, or just
yeah,
like free forever.
Yeah, I don't know. And there is closed captioning too. So for using it for labs or anything, right? So you can turn on closed captioning for students as well.
Awesome.
Hi, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that if you're on the Edpuzzle site, they do have an option for school districts to purchase a pro version. So I think that's how they make money.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
So this was done synchronously
You can do it.
in your session? I mean, everybody looked like it started June 16 about the same time, and those 3 individuals at the top just mean they weren't there that day?
Yes. So I did do it. I do teach synchronously. And so that's what I have actually had to play around with, is how to do that. I tried putting them in groups, and anyway, but I think the best way to do it synchronously is just to go live and show it on the main screen and then have the questions pop up on their device. But I did do it synchronously, but you could certainly send out a link and do it in asynchronous classes as well.
Hey, Angela,
Well, I'm always more interested in trying to do it synchronously
Me
right
too.
now. But anyway,
Yeah.
thanks.
You're welcome.
Hi, Angela. This is Rodney.
Hi.
Hey, when you the assignment, put in every student's name, and does it just grab the roster? How do you?
They do it. So when I add a class, So I say add a new class, and then I'll put in the name of the class, and then I get a link that I send to them, and they sign in and add their names.
Perfect.
Anybody else? Okay, so that is what I do for videos. I am going to show y'all, we have to lecture, right? That's just part of our job. I am going to show you next how I have turned my lectures into more interactive lectures. I do this in person as well. But I have found that now that we are online and we have this sort of barrier, this impersonal barrier between us, it's even more important to find a way for the students to interact with you, interact with the content, and engage, right? So they are paying attention and engaged. It's so easy when someone is just talking on a computer screen to just tune out, do something else, open another window. And so what I personally use during lecture is this. It's my favorite application, and it is called Nearpod. And so for this particular application, if you go to nearpod.com and you type in this word magic, it'll take you through this cute little tutorial. So this is like a little, interactive lesson about Mars. But what I love about Nearpod is you can input this interactive multimedia component to your lectures. Students can share answers, and you have the ability in real time to track their comprehension. And so I'm going to show you one of my personal Nearpods so you can see how some of these applications work. This is a lecture I just did in 1308. But you have all these options. You can input your PowerPoint slides. You can create your own slides. You can put videos, quizzes, those polls. I saw the question that somebody asked in Blackboard Collaborate. You can poll your students, but you can't store those questions in advance. You have to type the question. Well, in Nearpod, you can have those already loaded and ready to go, so you don't have to take time to type out the questions. There is one of the applications is they can actually draw on the slides. So here are some examples, like they can highlight. You can ask them a question and have them circle. They can draw. And so for this one, it says draw a yellow arrow that points to Mars. And so, they have they can type text or draw a yellow arrow that points over here to Mars. So they can draw on the screen. There are these really fun field trips. I don't see how any of them apply to 1308, but this particular one, you can take a field trip to the surface of Mars, which is just fun if you wanted to do that. And these quizzes. This is how I make my lectures interactive. So I put these quiz questions in, and this is what it looks like to the student. It's a question. Here are some multiple choice answers, but this is what it looks like to me. I see everybody's name and whether they answered the question correctly or not. And I even get a pie chart, and I can say, whoa, 67% did not answer that question correctly. I don't think I explained that very well. Let me backtrack. Let's talk about that again. So you get this real-time visual of their comprehension of the material. So I love this app. I use it every single class period. So I'm going to show you one of mine. This is one for mitosis. So what this looks like, I have all this already loaded in my library. I have the option to send it straight to a Zoom if you use Zoom. If not, if you use Blackboard Collaborate, which I still do, you can create this live lesson and they'll get a code. Either some of them like to do it on their phone, some of them just like to open another window and have it open in another window on their computer. But I can say live lesson, they get a code, and when they enter that code, everything on my screen will push to their screen. And if you teach asynchronously, you can certainly do it student-paced as well. So let me just show you some of the fun things. So I always start, whenever I'm introducing a new topic, I like to start with a review. And so if we're going to talk about, in this case, we were talking about mitosis. I'm going to remind them, it's been a minute since we talked about replication, but so let's go ahead and review that. So you can start with this kind of interactive thing, these Post-it notes, which are kind of fun, where I just ask this question: what are the enzymes involved in DNA replication? Let's start thinking about DNA replication again. And so this is gonna push to their screen, and they have this little box down here. Maybe they'll say helicase, post. And then they pop up like these Post-it notes. And so you can see the student Post-it notes start to pop up. And so that's one super fun way to get them engaged right at the beginning of lecture. Or maybe you just want to show a review video. So in Nearpod, you can insert these videos that will play on their screen. I could push play. It's just a YouTube video. And maybe I want to give them a pop quiz. Do you really remember replication? But for me, what I do every single class, I've loaded all my PowerPoints into Nearpod. And so when I lecture, I'm actually going through this Nearpod instead of my PowerPoint. I'm just advancing through my slides. I'm talking about it. They're writing notes. And then every so often in the lecture, up pops a quiz question. And again, how this looks to them, this is what it looks like to the students. What it looks like to me is that pie chart where I can see right away, did they really understand that concept or did they not? If 90% of them answer this correctly, we'll move on. If not, if I see there's a problem, some misunderstanding, I know right then and there to go back and re-explain. So it does several things. It keeps them engaged in the lesson because they don't know when those questions are going to pop up. And it gives me feedback about how they're understanding the content. There's one last really fun thing. At the very end of this particular lecture, I gave them this review, these matching pairs, where I said, okay, match each phase of the cell cycle with its correct picture. And then I put a little, you can add a timer. So I put a little timer and they had to match, oh, that's metaphase. And they had to go through and see how many matches they could make in 30 seconds. So yeah, Nearpod is my absolute favorite. I'm really only showing you a fraction of what it could do. We could spend 2 hours on this alone. But do y'all have any questions about this application?
I had a question.
Yes.
So for asynchronous, the students are going to be viewing this presentation obviously at different times. So if you were to do something like the Post-its, would you be able to see what everyone has done?
Yes, I can actually show you what my reports look like. Okay. I have this mitosis meiosis matching right here. And so what the report looks like is you can see how many each student got right.
Okay.
And actually, this particular, so you can, if you download the full report, you're going to get a much more detailed explanation. You can actually see, oh, they only got 3 out of 8 attempts. They did 19 attempts trying to get those matches. They were just randomly clicking. So you can get a more detailed report as well. And again, use it as an assessment and assign a grade to it.
Cool. How about for the beginning where you had that little question and they added those Post-it notes with different words that related to it? How are you able to view that with asynchronous? asynchronous?
So I usually do synchronous, so I've actually never tried to go back and view that from a student led, a student assigned perspective. I always am looking at it synchronously, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
I would have to play around with that and see.
Okay, cool.
Angela's Nearpod also free, or
It is. Now, so here's the thing. Here's a funny, if I go home, I don't know if you can see. It's, so the free version, it limits the amount of space that you have. And so every single member of my family has a Nearpod account because I have the free version, but I just use everybody's email address. When I run out of space, I go get somebody else's email address. But yeah, it is free. The only downside is it limits the number of presentations you can have because you're limited with space. And that's really the only thing that I have found that I don't have by not paying for the upgrade. Anybody else? All right, well, we have time to go through some of these games. This one, and again, the links are all gonna be in the PowerPoint that I'll share, so y'all can have the links. This one is really fun. It's a Jeopardy game, and it's very, very user-friendly. Again, I have the free version. You can pay for upgrades to add things like buzzers and whatnot. I use the free version. If you click on new game, you really can't get it wrong. I'll just auto generate a code, and I'll just call this practice. So you just click. It's so user-friendly and simple. You name a category, you type in your questions and the answers, and it couldn't have been easier to set up. I'm going to show you the one that my 1308 students just played yesterday, actually. Cancel that. So I have this 1308 final exam review. We're finishing up that 8-week session, and so I thought let's play some Jeopardy. So I have all the questions already loaded in. Like I said, it was very easy to do. I set a timer where they get 10 seconds to answer the question. And I even already had all their names loaded in. I created a team, so I didn't have to take time at the beginning of class typing in their names. I did not pay for the buzzer mode, so we can't play in buzzer mode. And this game board pops up. And so I just project the game board, and I have all their names. I actually entered them in order of best attendance to worst. So whoever has the best attendance gets first dibs on the question. And so here's just a tip that I have found when you try to play these games in class. You have like 3 students who dominate, right? I mean, maybe it's just my classes, but I feel like there are 3 know-it-alls who are gonna get all the points, and then the other 23 students are bored and they're not engaged because they know that these 3 know-it-alls are gonna get all the points. And so what I have done to kind of eliminate that dynamic in these interactive games is I am going to go through person by person, and they get to choose one question from the game board. So maybe Ellie said, I really liked cellular respiration. Give me a question from exam 3, $1, 1 point. And so the question will pop up, and she will get 10 seconds all by herself to answer the question. When the timer runs out is when I then allow them, I use Blackboard Collaborate, so they just raise their hand on their screen. And then it is an open question for everyone. But this way, every single person gets an opportunity to answer a question. So if she got it right, very good, Ellie, you get 1 point, and then we'll go on to the next question. And then the next person will get to choose. So this was just a really, they really, really liked this. The feedback yesterday was really good. They were all very much enjoyed this opportunity to review. Do you have any questions about this one?
I had a question. How are the teams interacting with each other? Is there like a chat screen or something?
So for this particular one, I sort of tried to think through how to do this in teams. The problem is when you put them in breakout groups, in Blackboard Collaborate, maybe Zoom actually would be a better option because I don't know about Zoom, but when they're in breakout groups, they cannot see my main screen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I couldn't figure out how to do that in groups. So I just made it this individual game. Okay. Where I go through person by person. Everyone gets one chance to have that 10 seconds to answer a question. And then it just becomes a free-for-all, whoever raises their hand. So okay. This particular one isn't teams, it's individual, only because I couldn't figure out an effective way to make it teams. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if anyone does, I would love to hear that.
Thank you.
What does a $5 question look like?
Oh man, let's see. So $5.
Yeah.
Oh, the electron carriers. You know, that is the hardest thing for they cannot never get this. So yeah, it's a $5 question. And I don't actually pay them money. I make that very clear up front. Listen.
Oh yeah, of course.
You're not getting $5 for getting that right.
Anyway, okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? What time is it?
You have really outstanding ideas. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. We have a few more minutes. I'm going to show you Quizlet Live is actually a way they can interact as teams. So what I did for this one, I have this one here, this acid-base review. So I put them in groups and they actually did a worksheet in a breakout group. And then I have the questions from that worksheet. I kind of, I loaded them in as flashcards in Quizlet. And we played a game. So if you click right here, once you have all your questions and answers loaded on these flashcards, I clicked live and I put them in teams. And so what happens when you play this in teams is everyone in their team is going to get one of those questions in a random order. They all have the same question at the top, but only one of them has the right answer on their screen. So they have to talk and work together to figure out who has the right answer. And so they kind of liked that. And again, it really encouraged them. Acids and bases is way back in Unit 2 for me in 1308. So it was pretty early on. And again, encouraging them, look, you have to talk to each other in those breakout groups, because if you don't communicate, y'all are not going to be able to complete this activity. So, and the students liked this particular activity because of the collaborative aspect, but also because then I could send them this link and they had access to these flashcards that they could use to study, and they could sort of individualize how they studied. So they could turn them into a quiz or turn them into a short answer. So they then used these flashcards to study for the test. So they liked this as well. Any questions about this one? Kahoot is another one that I have not played around with a lot. I've just started looking into it, so stay tuned. I'll figure it out more. There was kind of it looked like similar to Nearpod in that you could create these interactive lessons. It, to me, seemed a little bit more clunky than Nearpod in terms of creating the lessons. But what does look interesting to me is the game aspect. It gives you a lot more, you have a lot more options in how you create the questions as opposed to Quizlet. So this intrigues me. I'm going to look into this more. You can see I kind of started working on this mitosis meiosis review and kind of playing with it a little bit, but I don't feel like I haven't launched it with my students because I'm still kind of figuring this one out, but this one looks interesting to me as well, Kahoot. And then Laura sent me this link, this flippity.net, which she is gonna use it to turn some of those biology 1308 cards into an interactive experience. So anything that's in a Google spreadsheet, you can turn into flashcards or a quiz show. There's this drag and drop option. And so this, I mean, there's a lot of options available. If you want to make a word search, I mean, anything that you have in a Google spreadsheet, you can turn it into an interactive experience. So this also looks intriguing. I actually really like this one, turning your roster into this random team picker, because that's when we can finally get back in the classroom. One of the things I try to do is always mix up the groups when they're doing these collaborative activities, because it makes the environment of the room feel so much more inclusive and more safe when they are all interacting with each other instead of just the one person they came in knowing. So I'm always switching up the groups, and I'm going to use this once we get back in the classroom to randomly assign groups. You just upload your roster and then turns it into this interactive option to choose groups. So these are some more things that look kind of interesting. And that's really all I had for you guys. And what I wanted to spend the last couple minutes is just asking if maybe there were some applications that you guys are using that I did not show that you would like to share. None?
This is Jack.
Hi, Jack.
I love all these ideas, Angela. These are great.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to maybe digging a little deeper into Nearpod, especially with the interactive lectures, because I've used Nearpod for pop-in questions. So I'll do a lecture every 10, 15 minutes. I'll stop and do a Nearpod pop-in question. But I didn't know that they did all these other things, like actually putting my lecture in Nearpod, which looks so much easier for especially online learning. I use Kahoot a lot, especially for exam reviews. But I think that some of these other ones might be a little better than Kahoot. Kahoot is a little bit clunky and can be restrictive with like you can only get 4 answers and things like that. So it's pretty simplistic. But the students really loved it because of the colors and the sounds. That actually, the colors and the sounds got them really excited for some reason. But I'm looking forward to the Flippity. I was trying to figure out a way to do flashcards for 1308 that was just like more computer based. Kind of thing.
So you can have all your definitions and the terms in a spreadsheet, and you get you'll turn it into flashcards. So I know I think that looks like a really good resource as well.
So one question that I had was more about the sort of the pedagogy approach to these interactions online. One of the resistance that I've had with the students is that they don't want to join in with their cameras on.
Oh yeah.
Or turn their mics on. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you said like a whole group didn't have their mics on,
Yeah.
I experienced that pretty vividly. And they kind of had this expectation that I would talk.
Mm-hmm.
And they would just turn their cameras and mics off and, I don't know, watch TV and listen or something.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, these look like really great strategies, I think, to encourage them to turn on their cameras and mics.
Mm-hmm.
But have you tried any other particular strategies to encourage camera and mic use?
So camera, I don't, only because, is my internet connection unstable? Am I cutting out for you guys? I'm getting a message that I'm cutting out, which is timely with what I'm about to say. When everyone has their cameras on, the internet connection can be really unstable. So I don't actually do anything to encourage that. But with the mics, so for example, okay, that Jeopardy game, if they're trying to type an answer in a chat box, you get 10 seconds. Like, just turn your mic on and talk to me. But really the best way that I have found to encourage that, and I, even in the 2 summer sessions I taught, I still had a couple of students who never did, and maybe they couldn't. You know, and here's the thing too. I know that I had some single moms with kids running around and the kids are screaming. And when they did turn their mic on, everyone was like, turn it off, so loud. So, I mean, taking into account their own individual situations as well. But then I had some who just really didn't interact. And I felt like there's just some, I can't reach you. But I found overall, by initially that very second day of class, asking them to share about someone else in their group really set the tone this summer for turning on your mic and talking to each other. That was probably the best strategy, and it's honestly so simple, and I don't know why I didn't think of it last semester, but that setting that tone very early on was really helpful for increasing. Like I say, I never got 100% of them, but I really did increase, compared to the spring, the students who would turn their mic on and talk to each other, and to me too.
Yeah, when I tried to force the issue, the students just wouldn't come. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's way worse.
Okay, well, here's the thing though. Nearpod is their incentive to come because those questions, that's a section on my syllabus for points, for their grade. So if they don't come, they're missing those points.
So are you saying you're taking attendance? I didn't think we
I do.
could.
So when we're in person, I have an attendance policy. If they have more than 5, I'm going to drop them. I don't do that now because it's a pandemic and there are, you know, special circumstances. But I do take attendance in the sense that every single class, there are those Nearpod questions. Given the pandemic, I have had students contact me and, you know, I have to schedule a test right at noon. Can I send you, can I have the questions and can I send you the answers in advance? I have made a couple of special, you know, special circumstances that I allowed to turn their points in outside of class, before class. But in general, yes, those Nearpod points are the way I take attendance, in that they're points that can only be earned during class.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure on our policy. I'd like to give attendance points, but I was under the impression we couldn't.
Yeah.
Really reward, because some people do come. In fact, my one class, almost everybody comes every day, and the other one, maybe half come.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure what our
I think especially in the fall, you could designate your class as synchronous or asynchronous, so they really know what they're getting into.
Up for anything they want, and then because of the video recordings or the lecture recordings, they'll just look at it later whenever they feel like it.
Yeah.
I do want to bring back attendance points, so myself in the fall, if we can, if it's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still unclear about what policy here.
Yeah, I know. I don't think we can penalize them, but I think we
It
can
wouldn't be. It'd be more about giving a
incentivize
reward
them.
to the
Yeah.
people that do come,
Yeah, I think
most of the time. It's like one of those, you're not penalized for not, but if you do, you
right.
get extra,
It's
right?
extra. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, all right, well, thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all for coming.
Thanks so much. It was very helpful.
Oh,
Very good
good.
information.
I'm glad. I hope y'all have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hello. You're muted.
Okay, great job. Thank you so much.